So our next presentation, it worked out really well. We are talking about the arts today. We have the amazing Janet Reed and Tracy Dodson, who are associate professors at the Kent State University. And I just want to say, we met in a kind of a funny way. We were at one of the times we met, we were at the MNRS conference, and our research deans were talking to each other. And then they came over to us and said, you guys need to meet. It was like parents at a daycare. You guys need to set up a play date. And I'm so glad they did. I've really enjoyed working with you now. Even though you're at Kent State, you've been coming up to the Memory Cafe with Cleveland Clinic. So glad to have you a part of the Cleveland community, and welcome Tracy as well.
Marie, wait, oops. Marie. She remembered dancing the night away on Saturdays with her girlfriends at the dance halls, the music loud and the laughter louder. The dance floor was her happy place. It's where her worries melted away, no more stress, just joy took over. She loved to dance, every beat, every spin, pure freedom. It's actually where she met her husband. Those nights still make her smile.
This is Margaret's memory. Margaret's grandmother used to make candles in the cool, dim basement. She loved sneaking down there just to breathe in the sweet, waxy scents that filled the air. Rows of colorful candles lined the shelves, each one a little work of art. Every once in a while, she'd smile and let Margaret choose one of the candles to keep, usually the lopsided ones that she said weren't quite good enough to give away to anyone else. To me, and to Margaret, these were treasures. The basement always smelled like comfort and love.
So hello everyone, I am Dr. Tracy Dodson. I'm an associate professor at Kent State University College. Oh gosh, I'm bad at this. I am Dr. Tracy Dodson, associate professor at Kent State University College of Nursing. My PhD, Janet and I are like peanut butter and jelly. We get our PhDs together, so we kind of do everything together. PhD is in curriculum instruction with a focus on educational technologies. My research focuses on vicarious learning, like Bandura's social learning theory, and the use of expert modeling videos to see it before you do it.
Yes, and I'm Janet Reed. I'm also an associate professor of nursing. I'm a medical surgical nurse, and Tracy's an ER nurse, but we both teach nursing students at Kent State for the last maybe 12, 13 years. And so with our backgrounds in educational technology and caring so much about older adults and making sure our nursing students, we wanted to inspire them. So we developed this intervention that we're going to tell you about, that we use generative AI to do visual reminiscence for older adults in long-term care. And, you know, I was thinking about how we talked about robots and touch and hugging. We talked about music and hearing, and now we're going to kind of share with you the visual aspect that technology can help provide for patients to improve care. I don't know if anybody has technology that can like help with taste or smell, but maybe that's coming next. All right, we have no conflict of interest, but I will say our pilot study that we're going to tell you about was supported by Kent State's Healthy Communities Research Institute. And all of the pictures you're going to see are generated by AI. So full transparent disclosure here. They're AI generated by a program called Midjourney, which we hope to show you and showcase later at the end if we have time.
Very good. So imagine,
I'm just like someone else who said they never used the microphone, in my years. So imagine you're 85 years old. Your grandchildren come up to you and say, what was it like for you growing up when you went to your grandma's house? And you close your eyes and you think back to that time and how much you loved going to your grandma's house when she was canning. You remember the smell of the roasting tomatoes. You remember the cans lining up. You remember the light coming in from the window and how you used to love to sit in that little slice of sunshine. You remember the screen door slamming and Grandma yelling at you to stop running in and out. And so you have these memories, and maybe they're just a little bit fuzzy. Was the kitchen beige or was it light green? And it's not as clear. Now I remember a nurse coming in and talking to you, listening to your memories, and then she starts to make images. It's as simple as putting into Midjourney, farmhouse, 1916, older adult, brown hair, canning tomatoes, and all of a sudden you have this picture and you can see it, and that memory comes to life and starts to become a little bit clearer.
So for most of human history, memory has been fragile. Over time, our stories fade, the details kind of disappear. But new technologies may allow us to do something remarkable, help people visualize their memories again. And if we can make them, we can have them able to share with their family, friends, and caregivers to be known to the other people around them. So the question is, can imagination stimulation feed our memories as we age? And can it help revitalize them?
This is so hard. So we developed the Harmony, the intervention to address social isolation and demoralization. And we've talked about that a lot today, that is a big problem. So to target long-term care facilities, older adults, using generative AI to allow them to begin to visualize the best memories of their life. Harmony stands for Harnessing Artificial Intelligence Resources for Mental Wellness for Older Adults and Nurturing Empathy and Education. Well, that's a lot. But so this intervention was used. We began with scripted questions. And so these questions always evolved into more questions. But the scripted questions from early childhood, as they were growing up, teenage years, middle adult, older adult. And as these questions unfolded, we learned so much and we had such a wonderful time. Our focus team, we have an art therapist, we have counseling, we have nursing and nursing students, and we have psychology. And so altogether, we helped to develop this. And our goal overall was to positively affect the mood of those that we performed our intervention with, and to integrate nursing students, because it's so important to integrate nursing researchers, to show them what it is to data collect and what it is to get out and learn about research, plus to learn how to therapeutically communicate. Our young adults are a little bit different now. They have cell phones and they don't really socialize as much. So it taught them how to talk to older adults and how to engage, and they've learned so much through this.
So Harmony builds on reminiscence therapy, which has been used for many years in gerontology and with dementia patients to help older adults reflect back on their lives. And what we already know about reminiscence therapy is it's very effective in increasing mood and meaning and purpose in life. But there's one limitation. It often relies on old photographs or objects to help people reminisce. So what happens if there are none, or if an older adult doesn't have access to their photos? Art therapy has a lot of known benefits, but it's also relying on someone who can physically participate in art making. And so these are the gaps that we hoped to fill with generative AI for the Harmony intervention.
So the problems facing older adults in long-term care centers. So these are four of the big problems: social isolation, loneliness, demoralization, and depression, anxiety. And these are those common psychosocial problems. But the issue is these are strongly tied to negative health outcomes. So increased morbidity and mortality, poor quality of life, and reduced mental health and well-being. So when we began our research and we saw what was happening, this was what we wanted to target. This is what we wanted to help. This is what we wanted to mitigate. So poor physical and mental health can also serve as a barrier to participating and being social, right? And getting out and doing those social activities. So we specifically wanted to reach those individuals. That was hard. The ones that were socially isolated, that were in their rooms, were a little bit harder for us to reach and to convince to be part of this. While, Margaret and Barb, who are going to bingo, they're like, absolutely, this sounds like fun. I'm like, great, I want to help you, but I want the ones that need the help the most. So that was our biggest challenge that we weren't expecting, we weren't anticipating. So there are differences between all these terms, although they kind of look like they're similar, right? So isolation is social isolation is more of an objective feeling, an objective measure of not having a social connection, where loneliness is a subjective feeling of being alone or loneliness or being disconnected. So demoralization is a concept that involves the hallmark symptom of hopelessness. Also is accompanied with existential despair and basically giving up. So it's often confused with depression, but demoralization manifests as a profound sense of hopelessness, with a persistent struggle to cope that stems from a loss of meaning and purpose in life. So demoralization can be thought of as the opposite of hope. It often coexists with anxiety, depression, chronic illness, disability, social isolation. So although prevalence rates do vary, older adults living in long-term care facilities, research shows us that they have a higher degree of demoralization than their peers living in the community, assisted living. And untreated demoralization, again, can have negative health outcomes. It can impact the quality of life. It can lead to social withdrawal. It can decrease the capacity to engage in care planning and your medical treatments. And it can increase the incidence of suicidal ideation. So depression and anxiety are often positively correlated with those other variables, and they're commonly experienced by older adults living in long-term care facilities. Okay, just a touch of theory, okay, because it really builds into what we're trying to do here. So Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development is for older adults age 65 and older. The developmental task that Erik Erikson believes we should get to is ego integrity. So it's ego integrity versus despair, right? And you can guess which one we want to accomplish, right? So ego integrity fosters well-being, positive psychological responses, and it's through reflection and life experiences, celebrating past accomplishments, and creating a meaningful life narrative. To be able to say, I mattered, it was a life well lived, gets you to that ego integrity. So there are two effective treatments known to help build ego integrity, to help achieve ego integrity, and that's reminiscence therapy and life review, which our previous speakers have talked about as well. So reminiscence therapy involves a discussion of past activities, events, experiences, all with the aim of evoking meaningful memories. So improving cognitive function and enhancing psychological well-being. This holistic approach supports the emotional, the cognitive, and social well-being of older adults through activities like group discussions, individual sessions, engagement in multimedia materials like music, right? Music from the past, photographs. And so this reminiscence therapy has been linked to meaningful improvements in hope and spiritual well-being in later years. Now, life review is a therapeutic approach that's grounded in Erikson's theory that aims at facilitating ego integrity through photographs, autobiographical recordings, one-on-one interviews, and reflection on personal events in one's life. So this is what we wanted to do in the Harmony intervention, to integrate these two therapies using generative AI technologies to address those common psychosocial issues for older adults living in long-term care. We focused on making images that were happy, some turn sad, but we happy from early childhood again throughout until older adulthood.
So we did a pilot study, and these were our research questions. And we looked at the literature, and we saw that although there was lots of calls in the research literature that said, yeah, we need to integrate new technology with reminiscence therapy, no one had yet done it with generative AI. So we wanted to fill that. And we did this in 2023. Yeah, 2023. So this was when AI image generators were really new. And they've actually improved a lot since we did this. But our two questions were, what is the feasibility and acceptability of using the Harmony intervention with older adults in long-term care? We didn't know how the older adults were going to respond to this. And then how does the Harmony intervention impact their moods and emotions? We really wanted to integrate nursing students into this as well to learn about the rich life stories of the older adults who participated with us. So our research methods, we did mixed methods. So that means we looked at both quantitative and qualitative data. we did a longitudinal design. We had 3 times we met with participants. We met with them at like what I call 0 days, time 1. We did 30 days later when they got the intervention, and we made photo books based on their memories. And then we met with them again at 60 days. So it was over a 2-month period that we did this with our older adults in long-term care. We did it at 2 different nursing homes, 2 different long-term care facilities. One was rural and one was suburban. So I know we had a discussion earlier about, urban. Dr. Cola was in an urban area, but we didn't have an urban area actually. But we were really grateful to have 2 different facilities that let us come recruit participants to this. And our inclusion criteria. So you had to be an older adult living in long-term care. You had to have at least 1 chronic illness, which most people there have 1. That's why they're there. And they had to speak English so that they could communicate and understand with us. And then we did cognitively screen them. They had to pass a cognitive test. We did include people that had mild to moderate cognitive impairment. We used the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. So you had to score over a 10, which is 10 or less is severe cognitive impairment. So we couldn't take the severe, but we took the mild to moderate. And for some of our participants who did have mild to moderate dementia and cognitive impairment, we had family members participate in this with them, and that was really meaningful as well. So exclusion criteria, we did have some participants who had aphasia, and they really wanted to participate, but we just couldn't understand them, so we weren't able to take them if they couldn't communicate well enough with us, or if they had visual impairment that they couldn't see the images that were going to be created. So we recruited 40 older adults, and 34 of them finished the whole study, which was pretty good, an 85% retention rate. The reasons that the 6 didn't finish, it was due to illness, hospitalization, they were not there anymore, death, 3 of them, it was death, and then discharge from the facility. So the good thing for us was all the people that were still around willingly stayed in the study with us. We didn't have anyone that left, which was good. So our mean age was 79, and we had participants from age 61 to 97 who did this with us. 70% female, which is typical population in a long-term care facility, 30% male. And we did give Amazon gift cards, was part of our grant, because they had to spend quite a bit of time with us, getting interviewed, meeting with us 3 times. So we know it's hard to recruit long-term care residents to research because they often don't feel well and they don't want to participate. One more thing. So we enticed them with a $15 Amazon gift card. And we were like, we didn't know if they would know how to use the Amazon gift card, some of them. So this was, we talked earlier about that we have these biases about older adults. And I think that was one of our biases. We thought, they're not going to be able to use the Amazon gift card, are they? Well, they did. They loved the Amazon gift card. And they didn't just gift them to their grandkids. They actually used them for themselves, because when we would go back 30 days later, we would have people tell us, like the one resident told me, sit on my bed. Janet, sit on my bed. I ordered a foam mattress topper with the Amazon gift card. So they bought themselves things to improve their environment. So it was really great to see how they used the Amazon gift cards, and they really appreciated that. So these are the instruments that we used. We collected demographics. We used the Hearth Hope Index, which measures levels of hope. One of our prompts was, what kind of things bring you hope in later life? So we actually kind of looked like at their current, we tried to do some positive reframing about because they were looking back on their life a lot, and sometimes that can be sad, right? If you think about lost family members. But we also tried to think about in their present life, what things really brought them joy and meaning and purpose now. And so we measured hope. We measured different other psychosocial variables from the NIH PROMIS measures, which we use the short forms to look at their levels of anxiety, social isolation, meaning and purpose in life. And then we assessed mood with a smiley face assessment scale, which I'll tell you more about in a minute. And then at the end, after we had done the intervention with them, we made them a photo book with 12 of their favorite life memories printed in color with their name on it. We gave them the photo books. We told them to use it, share it with their caregivers, their nurses' aides, their family, and then we came back to see what thought of it after they had used it for a few weeks, and we did interviews with all of our participants and user satisfaction surveys. Yes. So like this picture, all the pictures in the presentation that you see are actually like memories from our participants. So this patient, she remembered riding her horse and her dog was nearby her and riding into the sunset. So we made her a picture and she told us exactly what the horse looked like. And so we often, when we would make the images, we would use the prompt of view from behind so that the faces weren't in it, so that they could imagine that it was them. We would say, what color hair did you have when you were younger? And she would say, oh, I have blonde hair, right? So we would say, middle-aged woman with blonde hair riding, view from behind on a white horse into the sunset. And then they would light up when they saw the pictures. And we also kind of tweaked it. Sometimes we would show them the pictures as we were making them. And we'd say, which one, I'll show you, but Midjourney makes 4 pictures. And then you get to pick which one you like best. And you get to, if it needed tweaked, we would tweak it right there with them and remake it until we got an image that they were happy with. So this kind of shows us the visual scale that we use to assess their mood with smiley faces. We know people, especially with cognitive impairment, this works well for them. And then these are some of the questions we asked. We asked them to tell us what it was like to do this intervention, how satisfied were they with the intervention, if we actually checked if they remembered what the images represented for them when we came back at the end. We said, we pull out their photo book and go, do you remember what this is? We wanted to see if they could remember what the images represented. And the good news is they did. They really did. Even the ones with dementia, they remembered. These were like, important memories in their life. What emotions this brought up for them, if they thought it was valuable, would they recommend it to others? Would they continue to use their photo book and how? If they had any negative emotions from the activity, we did have some participants who had some sadness because they were reliving maybe a lost child earlier in life and they wanted an image with that. But it was a good sadness because oftentimes it was helping them feel something. And sometimes these residents are alone in their rooms and they're just happy to feel something and to remember. So here's kind of a picture of what the photo book looked like. The great thing with AI that we realized is that it would bring back things that they hadn't seen in years. So if we put in the prompt, I want a 1950s red, whatever kind of car that is. Is it a coupe? I don't know. Chevy, 1958 red Chevy car. It will picture their car and they would light up and they would go, that was my car. I remember that. They might not have a picture of it in real life, but it would do that. And it would also recreate, like if we put 1960s living room with wallpaper, and the colors that they had, boom, they would see it and they would remember. And it didn't make it perfectly. It wasn't perfectly accurate, but it triggered things for them. And it really helped them remember and reminisce on the past. So what did we find? So I'll just share with you briefly our results, which are published. We looked at all those NIH promise measures, and this shows time 1, time 2, and time 3, which was 0, 30, and 60 days. And to my disappointment, we did not find statistically significant changes in these. I was really hoping, hope and meaning and purpose were going to go up, and they were trending in the right direction. I will say, if you see the means, they're going up the way I wanted at time 3, but not significantly, which means I can't attribute it to my intervention. However, these things are influenced by a lot of different factors, okay? And I don't know if the patients had the photo book long enough, so there's future research we want to do to see what this impacts. So I don't think the quantitative measures really told us necessarily the impact of the intervention. But we did find statistically significant changes in short-term mood. And so from the first time we went to see them, we would ask them, how are you feeling today? Give us your mood ranking. Then we would bring out their photo book and we would ask them to tell us about it. And then we would ask them, how's your mood now? At the end of talking to us for about 30, 40 minutes. And we found short-term mood improvement from looking at the photo book. And that's really why I developed the intervention with my team, was as a nursing intervention. As nurses, we deal with patients who are sometimes confused or having behavioral issues, or they become delirious due to medical issues. And so I wanted it as a grounding technique that nurses could use to pull patients into a happy moment and to get them to kind of redirect and refocus. And we know that happens a lot in long-term care. So it was a positive mood booster, and that was really good news. And you can see here for the patients that had no change, 35% had no change in mood, but we went back and looked, and those patients were actually rating their mood as very high already. So there was no change in mood for people who are already very happy. But the patients who had lower mood are the ones that changed, and there was 60% of the patients who were lower mood, they moved up in mood after doing this. And so I think the intervention has a lot of potential for people who may have depression or have lower moods to really serve as a mood boost. So in the future, we hope to look at that aspect more closely. For our qualitative findings with the interviews, we found these themes. We found that patients told us when we interviewed them, they said, oh, it just brought me so much joy and happiness to do this. It was fun. They thought it was fun. You don't get to have a ton of fun always when you're in long-term care. So this was great activity. And the activities directors were involved at the facilities we worked at. Actually, the other people started using the photo books, like speech therapists and other type of therapists were using them. The patients told us it was very nostalgic. It was like a trip down memory lane to see the images, and it was cognitively stimulating for them because it stimulated memories. And then they told us it did promote social connection. So they said that they shared it with their family, their grandkids. We had actually a few family members who participated with us call us and be like, I want extra photo books. Can we order 10 more? Because I want all my grandkids to have them to share grandma's story and grandma's favorite memories from her life. So they were leaving a family legacy as well through creating these. And they also got to connect with their caregivers. You know, as a nurse, I can come in the room and I can say, hey, how are you today? Or I can be like, hey, tell me about your photo book. And it promotes a deeper connection with patients when the caregivers can connect with their patients over their actual lives and really understand what matters to them, what values they have.
So you might have saw too that there was just a few that had a negative mood, and I want to tell you about that individual because it's funny. So we met with this individual, very socially isolated, and we started talking to her, and wow, she's like, well, the police were always at my house. And I'm like, I got to find a good picture to make. So I'm trying to spin it. I'm like, okay, well, who lived with you? I couldn't. So I actually made a picture of her as a little girl on the front porch with the police officers giving her candy. I'm like, I don't know what to do here. I'm trying to find a positive spin on this. And so we worked through a lot of the images. There's a lot of tears. I think this one took 2 hours. You were probably looking for me because I'm like, I got to find something positive. There has to be something positive. And the one picture that made her laugh was she had said that her and her boyfriend broke up and she threw the engagement ring. And a couple weeks later, she was at the car wash. They hung out at the car wash. She goes and she sees his new girlfriend, and she sees her engagement ring on that girl's finger. And she said, I went in there and grabbed her hair, and then she tried to get out of the car, and I slammed the door on her leg. And I'm like, oh my. And so I actually made a picture of that, of a woman trying to get out of a car. She told me the car with her foot caught in the door, and she laughed, and that was one that we put in her photo book. So she was a hoot, but it ended in tears because I'm like, how can I... something positive. And so it was very interesting, but we learned so much. This is the most meaningful thing to Janet and I, because I laughed, I cried, I always had to bring tissues. So it was awesome. And we found, generative AI images can't recreate the past perfectly, right? And the goal wasn't that. Like Janet said, we didn't use pictures of their actual faces because that really wasn't embedded yet. Now you can. Now I can upload a picture of the individual. We wanted to, maintain their privacy and such, but now you can make them even more realistic. But that goal wasn't the accuracy. It's about emotions and connections. I think they got as much out of the interview as they did the pictures, just spending some time with someone that wanted to hear. To create that moment when they say, yeah, oh my gosh, that reminds me of some of the best times in my life. I remember riding in the red pickup truck with Grandpa into town to get ice cream. And it allowed them to begin telling their story again, right? Seeing that visual representation unlocked stories that words just couldn't express. So as we age, our memory becomes less like a photograph and more like a puzzle with missing pieces, right? But what if technology could help us fill those pieces? Not by replacing a memory, but by helping individuals see their story again. Generative AI can facilitate shared storytelling between family members, like Janice spoke about. One of the pictures that we made for the woman with dementia, they brought in her mom met her dad. He was a school bus driver. And so we made a picture of a woman talking to a man who was in a school bus. They brought us in the actual photo. It was strikingly, eerily similar. Hers was in black and white and ours was in color. And it was so much fun for them to laugh with mom and joke around. Oh, do you remember when we did this? And they make the pictures together. So it can stimulate memory and conversation. And it can be harnessed for autobiographical storytelling as well to preserve the memories for older adults and help families remember their legacy. As we said, they did show it to their grandchildren and when their family members came in. So thinking about ethical implications, we did not have their likeness to keep that out of there, but of course you could do that now. But we learned that the individual should always guide the prompts, always guide the conversation, to give us those descriptions, not add a description that they didn't say because maybe we assumed it, right? It should reflect the patient's words and memories, not what we thought. Participation should always be voluntary. And ideally supported with family members when possible, because it was just as a rich of experience for them as it was for the individuals. And it became very important when working with having that family. The more cognitively impaired they were, the more important it was to have that family there as well.
I was asked a question where we put some of the images at an art show, at an art gallery at Ashland University in Kent State. And I was asked, well, who do these images belong to? Do they belong to the researcher? Do they belong to the patient? Who owns these? Which brings up an interesting ethical point about AI images. So AI images right now are not copyrighted. There is no copyright for AI images. So we had permission from the patients with our IRB to share their de-identified. We changed all the names, their images. But, it's an interesting conversation is, who do these images belong to? And really the answer is no one, because they're not copyrightable. So here's an example. You want to share about this, Tracy?
Yes. So one of our participants was an older man that we asked, what was the happiest place from his childhood? He said it was the farm he grew up on, and he loved caring for the chickens. The farm is long gone. There are no photographs to remember it by. But imagine asking him to describe it. He says, well, the wood fence back by the chicken coop was falling apart. The roosters were loud, and I named every one of them when I was a boy. Now imagine entering those words into a generative AI system, and an image appears. When he sees it, he smiles, not because the image is perfect, but because it helps him remember something that he hasn't talked about or thought about in years. The image didn't create the memory. It created the space for the story to return, a story of a life well lived to be known and experienced by others. If you had a picture like this of a special memory, how do you think it'd make you feel? So I'm going to ask you to indulge me and close your eyes. Think back to that favorite childhood memory. Was it being with grandma and grandpa? Was it being with mom or dad? Think back to a time, a peaceful place where you felt safe and comfortable. Now imagine your surroundings using as many of the senses possible. And so you can just keep it to yourself, or you can tell someone else about it, but how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel happy? Does it make you smile? Does it make you say, man, if I could just go back there for an hour? Think about that is what we spent time with our older adults doing, allowing them to go back to those times that were the most meaningful for them, to show them that their life really did matter.
So we think our study has some important implications for healthcare, specifically about how AI can be used as a bridge to better human connection. I know a lot of us think maybe AI is going to potentially replace human connection, and maybe it is going to displace some jobs in some areas. But how can we keep humans in the loop to make sure it's used for good purposes? And we think our study is an example of a case that we were able to better human connection through using AI. I know everyone doesn't agree with that. I've had many people tell me they don't believe there are any ethical uses of AI because of environmental concerns and other things. But we really think that the way we used it here was able to help nurses, caregivers, family members better connect. And person-centered care, right? This was so customizable so individualized for each person. So we think that that can be really used to honor people's stories and help their caregivers know them and what matters to them. And then we think the intervention really holds potential for nurses when patients are agitated or having sundowning or behavioral issues. A patient's familiar image can provide familiarity, emotional grounding, and reinforce who they are in those moments. So meaning and purpose, identity restoration, how can we use technology to improve those things for patients? So where are we going with this? There's some areas that came up that we want to further explore, and we're trying to find some grant funding to help us do that. One of them is to look at specifically with the dementia patients, the family members and that relationship there, because we noticed it was really powerful for those dementia patients, the cognitive stimulation that was happening and how the families were so engaged. And then the other area we've been asked to go, do you want to get the picture of the veteran? We were asked to go into the Ohio Veterans Home to specifically use the intervention for combat veterans. And so we're partnering with some experts in trauma-informed care and how this could potentially be used to help that population.
And this, of course, isn't from that yet. This was one of our residents.
Yeah, one of our residents who participated had some of his favorite memories was with the men.
With his band of brothers.
Yeah, with his band of brothers. So we made an image for him of that. Do we have time to make an image? Do you guys want to make a group image together? Yeah? Okay. Maybe we'll just do one for the sake of time. I will need some help with getting switched over. Oh, okay. That's easy. All right. So we were going to have you guys do a group image making together. Have you ever done Mad Libs? Do you know Mad Libs? It's a game my teenagers like to play. So we're going to call on you. If you can raise your hand and give us some words, Tracy's going to take notes, and then we're going to make an image together.
Sorry. Okay, so while Janet.
I've got a short rope here. So while Janet's doing that, we are going to generate an image of a blank older adult, a blank older adult superhero. Any adjective, throw an adjective out. And I do not have my hearing aids in, so shout it loud. Family dinner. Family dinner.
Yeah.
Okay, an image of a family dinner older adult superhero whose power is, what is a superpower?
Name a superpower. Someone raise your hand.
Or shout it out.
Strength.
Strength, okay. Their superpower is strength. Okay, you got my journey up. Okay. They use a blank as their weapon. They use, name a household item as their weapon. A broom. I love it. Family dinner. Oh yeah, we need a different adjective than family dinners. An
Give me a
adjective, something to
descriptive word.
describe.
How would
A
you
descriptive
describe
word.
an older adult? Noisy.
A noisy older adult whose superpower is strength. They use a broom as their weapon. They survive entirely on, give me a snack food. They survive entirely on cupcakes. They protect, name a city. Cleveland! They protect Cleveland and travel by, what's a transportation method? Give me any transportation method. Whoa, that was all at the same time. Shoot it again. Motorcycle, I'm sorry. Snack food is cupcakes. And they protect Cleveland. And they travel by motorcycle. We probably have a little bit too much fun with this program. But a lot of the images are just so much fun to create.
All right, my prompt says, a noisy older adult with strength as their superpower. They use a broom as their weapon, survive on cupcakes, protect Cleveland, Ohio, and travel by motorcycle. And I'm going to put high realism because I want to see how realistic of an image it's going to make of this. So I send the command. It usually takes about a minute, and it's going to give me 4 images. And what we would do when we would make these with patients, a student nurse would be interviewing about their favorite life memories, while the researchers were putting the prompts. And what we learned is there is an art to putting prompts. I'll make it bigger. It's coming into focus. I'll make it bigger, and you guys can pick which one you like the best. But there's an art to writing prompts. We found that our student nurses really struggled to do it, and Tracy and I had to do it for the most part. But here we go. Oh. I see the cupcakes. I see the broom. Wow.
This one, yeah. Got the red sunglasses. This is awesome.
Do you want to do one more? Do we have time to do one more? Do you want to do one more?
Okay, let's do
Okay,
one more.
One more. Okay, so if you didn't get to participate, this one is my favorite because I'm a fan of Cedar Point. So this is an older adult at a theme park for aging. What could be an adjective to describe a ride at this theme park?
Scary.
Okay, give me a ride type, a type of ride, a type of roller coaster or parasailing. Okay, so we have a theme park designed for aging featuring a scary parasailing that makes people feel, give me an emotion, giddy, that makes people feel giddy. With visitors eating what type of food? No, I like cotton candy too. Hot dogs while hearing blank throughout the park, while hearing what sound throughout the park? Screams, very good. Okay, so we got a theme park designed for aging featuring a scary parasailing that makes people feel giddy with visitors eating hot dogs while hearing screams throughout the park.
So as far as image generators, if you wanted to go home and make your memory that you imagined, you can do that. There are a lot of free image generators online. The one we're using is a paid account, but there are free ones. So I encourage you, if you've not tried around this and you want to make your memory and share it with your family members, to go home and do that. Okay, here we go. I don't think it's quite done yet. There we go. Okay. Which one do you guys like best? Wow. It's got storm clouds in the back of some of them.
Doesn't seem very like scary screaming. That's good.
It's joyful screaming at the amusement park. Yeah, so that's a little demo of what AI can do in seconds. And when we were with the at the art therapy conference talking about this, you know, it kind of came up, well, why didn't you use real artists for this? And it's a great question. Of course, like human artists, we want to use human artists when we can, but human art takes a long time and costs a lot more. Expensive, right. And a lot of our older adults couldn't handle a long period of time waiting. And then part of the benefit of this was that the speed that it happened so fast for them, they could see it right away. All right, so let's see if I can just go back to my slides from here. Oh, I can, okay. So just to close, there we go. Final tips. We found this intervention was very acceptable. Almost, I think, 100% said that they had 100%, they would recommend it to others. Patients really enjoyed doing this. We hope to extend it and learn more in different populations and learn more about the benefits that it can have. So we talked about some of the things we found: positive impact on mood, happiness, nostalgia, social connectedness. We think it has potential to enhance the emotional well-being for older adults and provide that cognitive stimulation. One thing I will say is back in 2023, the image generators would generate celebrities' pictures. So this is an example one. We had one patient who loved Elvis. She was like, I love Elvis, he's my favorite. So we made a picture of her as a young woman with Elvis, loved it. We had another that made a picture of her with Chuck Norris because he was her hero, and she wanted to, and she was in a wheelchair. She was in a wheelchair her whole life. So we made a picture of a lady in a wheelchair doing karate with Chuck Norris, and it meant so much to her. Now the image generators won't let you do celebrity photos because there's too much deep fakes. A lot of them say, nope, we're not generating a fake image of a celebrity. We won't do it anymore. And I think that's probably a good ethically thing to prevent that from happening. And then here's our contact info, and if you guys have questions, we will be around afterwards. Yeah? Want to do some questions? Yeah? Okay, 1 or 2 questions we're happy to answer. What questions do you have about this?
Could that be used for PTSD?
Yeah, so when we go to the veterans home, that's something that we're hoping to explore. That's a great question. Yeah, and I think my husband is a counselor in training, and he says, you know, I could use those photo books for cognitive behavioral therapy. So I think there is potential for some of those kind of things in the future research.
I just want to give you a compliment for this really clever, original idea that sure it will be having lots of implications for care of older adults. Wonderful.
Thank you so
Very
much.
creative.
Thanks.
Where do you find your published research at?
Oh, okay. It's in the journal Geriatric Nursing. Yeah. 2025.
Does it have a title
No, we don't. Yeah,
on the
you,
very first page?
if you look up the Harmony intervention, you'll find it online. Yeah. Other questions?
A question, I know that using actual photographs
Yeah.
also will stimulate memories and so on. Have you done any research into whether this is preferable? Obviously, if there is no picture for the memory, this works, but do you think about using both or
Yeah, so that's a
comparing?
great question. We would sometimes talk about, like, sometimes patients would have photos in their room. They would have them hanging up already. So they would say, I already have photos about what you're asking me about, right? They're hanging on my room. So that is a great thing for future we could look at. There's already been a lot of research done on the effectiveness of phototherapy. So we were specifically looking in places when there maybe wasn't photos, and would it even mimic those kind of findings?
No mention was made of travel. I would think travel would be something that would certainly stimulate memory.
Oh, traveling. Like when the patients traveled.
Yes.
We have a ton of photos. People made photos of vacations, favorite vacation spots that they traveled to with their loved ones. Disney World, yeah, they went with their family. One guy and his wife, they went to Hawaii every year, and they would often picture their favorite travel spots. That was a very common theme. Very few people pictured work in their best life memories. I will say, it was mostly vacations, family members, favorite pets. You know, very few people were. We did have one guy who was like, my best memory was with my boss, you know, but most people it was other things. So it was good to think about what things are most meaningful in life.
And we learned that, we learned a lot. I did not know that you could have a chicken as a pet. Apparently, yeah, oh yes. Apparently a lot of people had farms and had chickens as pets. And Henny Penny, yeah. We still remember.
Good. Okay. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much.